Hello EPQers. This video is for two types of people. First of all, you were in the lesson and you attended the lesson and listened to this presentation when you were in class, but it was so much information I bombarded you with that you're going to use it again to just pick up any key points that you might have missed. And secondly, it's also for people who unfortunately missed the session. Now there's a very small number of you that did that, but I think it's absolutely vital that you are aware of everything that needs to be done over the summer, because you cannot leave it until the last minute with EPQ. The way that we've timetabled it, these 3 months normally would be in the college term, so you would still be having lessons. This way it hasn't fallen this way, so you can finish earlier, you can finish in October rather than right in the middle of your exams. However, that does mean you need to work on it as if you were at college. Okay. So, first of all, we'll start off with a little positive. Let me see if I can get rid of... There we go. What's left on EPQ? So, your first week back, you have your project product review and presentation part A meeting with me. That's what you have when you are almost there, but you've still got editing and proofreading left to do. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a bit. So I normally have a picture of a little squirrel who's reaching for the nut that's just out of its reach. That's how you should feel the first week back with EPQ. You should be almost there, but you've just got a little bit left to do. You're going to have a bit of a break from it because you've been working on it all summer. So when you go back to it and proofread it fresh, then you're all right. Okay. Then the 2nd of October, and can I ask you all to put this in your diaries, your phones, triple check, let people know, because they will be invited as well. People from home, I'll be sending a letter home for them. About the presentation. So you will have a marketplace. It's not a terrifying presentation where you stand up in front of people like I might in a lesson and teach. It's you have tables out, you have boards up, and people wander around. And we are going to make it compulsory for first year students who want to do EPQ to attend. So we want you to present your EPQ in such a way that it appeals to them. And that's from 12:30 until 3:30 on the 2nd of October. You may have a lesson on that day. However, you will be. You need to contact your teacher and ask for the work, but you won't be expected to attend the lesson. And then one last little bit that you do right at the end, you've completed absolutely everything, there's nothing left to do, then you complete your summary and reflection. And that's done after your project, after your presentation, after everything. The only thing it needs to be before is the deadline, because you hand it in on deadline day. And then the hand-in date is Monday the 14th of October at 5 o'clock. And that's the end time. That's not the time that you need to stretch it out to. So if you're ready before that, if you do the presentation and the next day or the next couple of days you've got the paperwork, you are welcome to hand it in to me early. The more projects I get in early, the more I can start marking. So I can't give anybody feedback or marks before you've all handed in. However, the sooner everybody hands them in, the earlier I can mark them, the quicker I can get you your marks back after the 14th of October. If you all leave it to the 14th of October, I'll have to do all the marking after that. Okay, so if you want your mark quickly, encourage people to get their EPQs in. So, weirdly enough, normally I would tell people to get on with their homework straight away, get it over and done with, and then you don't need to worry and you can have a nice relaxing summer. This piece of homework I do not recommend you do in advance. So I would recommend that you, so exactly as it says here, you're called your project product review and your presentation part A, and they are both on your production logs, which are on your Google Docs, and they will be the next 2 sheets that you need to fill in. Okay, so you should have filled in your mid-project review, and it will be your project product review will be the next one if you scroll down, and then after presentation part A. So 2 pieces of paperwork for me that we will have one meeting about when I come back. We'll start them the first week back, and we need to move through them pretty quickly as well. And you do those when you've written your report or created your artifact, but have got the finishing touches left to do. So exactly like I said, which is why I don't recommend you do it right at the beginning of the summer. What I recommend is you constantly chip away at EPQ throughout the summer, and then you do your paperwork at the end. So at the end of the summer, I'd like your report written or your artifact created. Okay. So this is your project product review. So this will be, I would say, the last week before, or the second to last week before the summer finishes, you want to do your project product review. And these are the kind of questions that you want to answer. Now, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the basic structure. Did my project follow my revised plan from the mid-project review? So the first thing you should do is go back and read in detail your mid-project review. For you, obviously, when you're marking it, there's a big time gap between them. Some of you had your project review, mid-project review, absolutely ages ago, and you won't have, it's going to be another 2 months until your mid-project review. So writing-wise, it feels like a very long time ago. However, when I'm marking it in front of me, I'm turning over a page, and then your next page is there. So your mid-project review for me is really fresh in my mind, so I need it to be really fresh in your mind. So before you read it, read your mid-project review, and then you write your project product review afterwards. And that's when you comment on, oh, I said I was going to do this, 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 and this. I've done this. I haven't done this. The reason I haven't done this is for these reasons, and then talk about all the changes you've made. So these are some of the assessment objectives that you want to really evidence in your mid-project review. So clear evidence of monitoring progress against agreed objectives, which is what I've just described. Oh, I said I was going to do this, 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 and this. Those are the agreed objectives. I've managed to do this, 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 and this. There you go. You've monitored your progress. There's evidence of appropriate changes and clear and appropriate reasons for any changes. So again, I made this change, and this change. I did it for this reason, and this reason. So originally I said I was going to do this. However, I changed it and I actually did this, this, and this. The reason for these changes were. And then the same here, A3, take appropriate decisions. I don't know the difference between a change and a decision, really, as long as you talk about, and I don't think it matters too much on the mark scheme. The key thing is we need to see you making decisions and making changes and telling me the reasons why you made this decision or why you made this change. And then you can't do any, and then then the next one is your modifications you made as a result of a discussion with your supervisor, and obviously you can't do anything with that until you've met with me. Okay, so you don't need to don't fill that bit in. It's just, did my project follow my revised plan? Okay, so the kind of things you might want to consider are, what have you achieved since your mid-project review? So you said you were going to do these things. This is what you actually achieved. So I keep saying you said you were going to do this, 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 and this, and you actually did this, this, and this. I didn't do these things for these reasons. I keep saying that for a really valuable reason. So just make sure that that's what you're doing. Okay, you're covering everything. If you say you're going to do something and then you never mention it again, you don't talk about why you didn't do it, that's bad for your grade. Okay. Have you achieved everything you said you would by this point? Are you ahead, behind, or on track? And it's fine if you can say, well, I'm ahead in these places, but not in these places. I did these things for these reasons, i.e. I was getting really behind because I was really bored by this topic. So what I did is I put it aside for a week and did research on this topic, which I found much more interesting. That's a decision you've made, a change you've made, and a reason why you've made it. Or I was getting really stuck for this reason, so I decided I'd do 20 minutes of reading on this topic every other day, but I was actually going to focus most of my time on this topic. What changes have you made since your mid-project review? These two are really important. So this question and the next one, what decisions you have made. And again, the difference between changes and decisions is fairly minor. There isn't really a huge difference. You could argue it was a change or a decision. That doesn't really matter. The key thing is you must tell me about changes you've made, which is why you can't do the piece of paperwork until the end, and what decisions you've made and why you've made them. Okay, now you can talk about, has your project been successful, and what developments needed, how are you doing that? So if this wasn't so successful, why was it not so successful, and how are you going to move forward on it? Okay, the next piece of paperwork is your presentation part A, and to be able to fill that in you need to know a little bit more about your presentation. So you know it's on the 2nd of October, 12:30 till 3:30, and you know that it's going to be a table and people are going to wander around and ask you questions. What you must still include in your EPQ submission is PowerPoint slides, or some form of visual thing. So you must have it must include slides or some kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word, some resources that you've used for the presentation. I've got a piece of advice for you. A lot of the students find it quite expensive. You do have to print off your own presentation, so use the credit that the college gives you, because you might want to do it in colour. Don't throw them away afterwards. Save them, doesn't matter if they've got a few holes in them from, say, being pinned on the board, and put those in the back of your EPQ. Okay? So, possible presentation structures. The first thing you need to know before you can write your presentation part A, which is about how you're going to structure your report, your presentation, is different types of presentation that you could do. Now, everything's flexible, and you fit it around your presentation and content. So you need to include all of these elements. It doesn't matter how and when you include them; they just all need to be included. These are some images of people who've done some presentations. So they've got you can see they've got a table, they've got the boards, and then they've got things placed out in front of them. This person even used a laptop as well. It's whatever you would like to do to draw people in and make people interested. So that's quite a nice, visually quite a nice one, with all the books, and then with bits of string leading to different things as well. And then this person had an artifact which people could have a look at, but also imagery, and look, they've got a Gantt chart there of how they plan their time, all of those different things. Okay, AQA's advice, which I copied and pasted directly from the website. So if you wanted to talk about your problem was that you didn't know how to do the presentation, so you went on the AQA website and found out what they wanted to include. This is exactly what it says on the AQA website about EPQ. So the things you must include in any order, in any style, in any way are what your project was about, why, the reasons that underpin your project. So why did you choose them? What was the purpose for your project? Your aims and objectives, which you've already written and we've talked about as well. What research was undertaken and why? A review of your performance and achievements. So how well did you do? Lessons you've learned, and how your project might affect your future career or education. And if it doesn't, that's absolutely fine. Think more broadly, what kind of skills have you developed? Independence, planning, referencing, time management, all of those different things. It doesn't have to be as clear cut as you might think it might be if you've chosen a topic that's just something you're interested and passionate about. So in any order, in any style, in any fashion, those things must be included. One possible structure that you could use is you could have a starter or engager activity. Don't forget, people are wandering around. If you think about when you're wandering around marketplaces or university fairs or job fairs, anything like that, it's very awkward and embarrassing to stop at somebody's table if there's nothing on it. So if you have something they could do, a matching activity, a true or false activity, an opportunity for them to write their opinions down, to look at things, to do things, then that's really, really useful, and it draws people in. So think about, you see hundreds of starter activities hopefully every week in lessons. Think about how they're done. Okay, why did you choose this topic? What inspired you? Filter from broad to specific. So you start off really broad, I like modern history, then filter it a little bit closer. I'm interested in the development of warfare in modern history, and therefore filter it even more specifically, and therefore I chose World War I because it was the first to ever use technology, or whatever your reason might be. Then you had your aims and objectives, your overview of your report, and this is really important. Your presentation doesn't have to cover absolutely everything in your report. Short and focused. They need a section of your report in there, as in, so that you would talk about. So if you talked about, I don't know, the economic implications, social implications, feminist implications, historic implications, and environmental implications of, oh my goodness, World War II, let's say, can't really think, then, and that's a huge report because it's 5,000 words. So if all you wanted to talk about were the economic and environmental implications, then that would be absolutely fine. You don't have to talk about the whole of your report, just a section. And if I were you, I'd pick the section you're most interested in. Okay? Then you have to evaluate the project. What went well, what didn't go so well, what would you do differently next time? You have to think of future research topics and as well that might be of interest, skills you've gained, and then thank the audience for listening, an opportunity for any questions. Another structure could be this one, so you could do all the AO1, all the AO2, all the AO3, and all the AO4. So what was your topic? Why did you decide to do it? How did you plan your time, and how did you monitor your progress? AO2, what did you find? So talk about your research, and how did you evaluate your resources? AO3, any problems you had, how you solved them, any decisions you made and how you solved them, any creative thinking that you did as well. And then evaluations and strengths and weaknesses of the planning, the implementation and outcome, and your own learning. So that's a different one. You can choose whichever one you want, or you can think of a third way as well. Okay. The key thing here to think about with your presentation part A paperwork is AO3, problem solving. Your problem is the problem I'm giving you is you have to do an effective presentation. Your problem solving is how you are going to do this. And there you go, you've got candidates take appropriate decisions. Why did you decide to do what you did? The outcome is fully realised, so make sure the way you plan and describe your presentation is actually what it looks like. Okay, so they're just the assessment objectives for you to consider. So ultimately, presentation part A will look like this. If you go and have a look on your Google Docs now, there's a planned format of my presentation. And that's so how is your presentation going to be structured? And some of the things you could talk about are timing, audience, use of visual aids, the slides, the use of notes, and engagement with the audience. So engagement with the audience is the starter activities that you used as well. And then the next section is planned content. So in slide 1 I'm going to do this, slide 2 this, slide 3 this, slide 4 this, slide 5 this. And I read through and look at these carefully because I need to make sure that you're covering everything that you need to in your presentation. I need to point out and say, or if you haven't included this, that's something that you need to consider. Okay, so remember all of these. Why have you chosen? These are the choices you've made. Why have you made these choices? Okay, so that's your presentation part A. They're the things you need to include, and then we have a meeting and you take your notes and talk about your modifications. And here's some suggestions of some engagement activities. Now think carefully because people are wandering around, so they're not sat in a classroom-like structure where they present it on the board and you sit and watch. They wander around instead and ask questions. So just some things that would draw them in. True or false activities. Kahoots might be tricky. You've got a for and against. You could get them to rate themselves on a whiteboard, or you could have a piece of paper and get people to put a number as to why they think they are in the debate, and then put another number so they strongly agree and then they're neutral, for example. Name the from the picture, so you might have lots of different pictures of people and then you have to identify which person is which or something like that. Multiple choice, matching activities. We've got some buzzers you could use for a quiz, but again they might be tricky because you're wandering around. And then statements, how much do you agree with? And you could have the same thing. You could have how much do you agree with the statement of this, and you could have a big long continuum line and get them to write their names where they think they are, or just make a mark where they are, and that can all be included in your presentation as well. If you missed out on it from lesson, this is just an example of my starter activity that I might have if I was doing a piece of research into psychology. And as you can see, they can have fairly tenuous links here. So you've got the psychologist or serial killer. So I could be doing anything about psychology or about a particular psychologist, and I might use this. So for example, you need to decide if you think this person is a psychologist or serial killer. Don't worry, I'm just going to quickly show you a few of these. So in your presentation, you could have all the pictures out on the desk and then get people to guess. And then you would tell them, so you'd say, oh no, he's not a killer, he is Wilhelm Wundt, he is the person who developed and invented psychology. This person is a convicted serial killer. This person, of course, somebody said he looked like if he was an animal he'd be a cat, which I kind of get, weirdly enough. So that's Skinner, very famous psychologist. And then we've got this gentleman here, which some of you might recognise, Ed Gein, who's had lots of things based on him now, since including I think there's an American Horror Story film about him as well. And then this chap who is Bandura, who is a psychologist. And I think that's everything. Yes, don't worry about the referencing. Okay. A little bit, if you're a bit thrown on source evaluation, I talked a little bit about source evaluation, so it might be worth having a look at that as well. So, your homework. Throughout the whole summer, which is just starting now, stretching ahead of you, complete the first full draft of your report, or make complete your artifact in full. The more you do in the summer, the more grateful you will be. Think how crazy September was when you started last year. It will be that crazy next year, but also twice as hard because it's the second year. Then in the last 2 weeks of the summer, so the second to last week, plan your presentation, and in the last week of the summer holidays, complete your product review and your presentation part A, because the first week back I will be having meetings with people about your paperwork. Okay. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to email me and I will be able to answer. I'm in most of the summer. Occasionally I'm not in, so it might take me a little while to reply, but I will reply. Don't leave it to the last minute. Keep chipping away at it, okay? And that is the key to success in EPQ. Good luck.